In today's program, national costumes of Kazakh, Kyrgyz, and Azerbaijan people. Relevant, modern, and fashionable. Hello. National clothing is still relevant even in the age of globalization and digital technologies. It is a kind of an ethnographical identification code. It reflects culture, lifestyle of one or another nation, and its character. And it passes domestic and art values to the next generations. This is what we will tell you about today. Moreover, we will show it to you. I think that we will start with presenting you traditions of Kyrgyz national costumes. A person who dedicated years to this kind of art will help us. Kyrgyz national clothing has remained unchanged for almost 700 years and is an important component of the culture of the people along with traditions, customs, music, and cuisine. Today, traditional clothes are worn for holidays and various events. All outfits are closely related to the history of the people. They clearly reflected the social status, marital status, and age of the person. A distinctive feature of national clothes is a special cut, adaptability to the conditions of nomadic life, and horseback riding. Traditionally, women's wardrobe consisted of both underwear and outerwear. There was always embroidery on the chest of women's shirts, and if it wasn't, then they put on a bib of the jaka embroidered with colored threads. A unique element of women's clothing was the warm skirt of beldamchi. This is a hinged apron on a wide belt worn over a dress or a bathrobe. The edges of the skirt diverged in the front. Usually beldamchi were sewn from heavy material. Sometimes they were insulated from the inside and protected from winds. Men used beldamchi as combat clothing, and as a rule they covered the material with metal plates. Madina Tapayeva is working as a seamstress. She has been sewing national clothes for 15 years now. It all started when she was presented with a book that described the history of the Kyrgyz people. Flipping through the pages, Madina came across an illustration of the first national women's costume, which for some reason seemed to her not very rich. She thought, some kind of a simple vest and absolutely expressionless hat. It was at that moment that the idea of creating outfits that would be worn in modern society arose, moreover, daily.
В 1994 году я попала на фабрику Ilbirs. In
2004, I came to Ilber's factory and my first collection was made of cotton knit in national Kyrgyz style. The same year, I made national wedding dress. I was asked, why did I decide to make this dress? No one will wear it. Everyone prefers European style. 1 year later, I had an order to make a national wedding gown. According to Madina's opinion, Kyrgyz national clothing has been through many changes during the whole period of its development. It was under the influence of different reasons: increase of productive forces, trades, and affairs with other nations, In Kyrgyz clothes, it is possible to notice identity and features which were peculiar to separate territories and tribes.
Северный Кыргызстан и Южный Кыргызстан, так как у нас разные природные условия, то и костюм тоже, как говорится, играет.
Since we have different climate and environment, the costume means a lot in this manner. Narin costume is thicker and warmer, with multi-layers, and there is no extra details on it, because most people there were engaged in sheep breeding.
Перебирающийся, поэтому ничего лишнего нету, но в то же время край суровый, холодный.
Therefore, they didn't need anything extra. But at the same time, it was a cold place, and clothing was suitable for the climate, less decorated, but it was made of fur, wool, and felt. The same thing about the South region. On the contrary, most people were involved in farming. They grew cotton. The climate was too hot and winter was quite warm. That's why they wore oversized style clothes made of natural fabrics, mostly of cotton and Kyrgyz natural silk.
В основном хлопок, натуральный шелк, вот этот наш кыргызский. Вот, поэтому здесь обязательно даже головной.
Even headdress, which is called yelechek, was different. Northern people used to wear a headdress which didn't cover face. In South region, on the contrary, people used to cover face from the sun because it was too hot. As for the patterns, in the South, there were colorful and bright colors, such as red and green. But Narin costumes were not decorated with rich patterns. They were more simple and plain.
Вот, а, например, нарынский костюм, там узоры более скупые, более четкие.
In ancient times, it was possible to identify class position of a person according to his or her appearance. Commonly, poor people had to settle with a robe as an outdoor clothing. Moreover, sometimes it was worn without underwear. Shepherds and ordinary workers used to receive old second-hand clothes of the family members of the owner they worked for. At the same time, landlords and rich breeders used to wear clothing which was made of expensive fabrics. For instance, their coats were made of a soft lamb skin. A special feature of their costumes was a white leather belt, decorated with silver items.
И люди раньше друг друга различали именно с какой стороны приехал человек, именно по костюму.
People used to identify each other according to the clothing they were wearing and to the patterns on it. Patterns were divided into male and female patterns, or patterns for young and older women. If a man was single and was looking for a bride, his cap had a cut on the center. It meant that he was looking for a bride. If a cap had no cuts at all, or cuts on each side, it meant that a man is married. Young women had the same situation. If a girl was not wearing a hat, without a fur, or she was wearing a hat kepka kia or shukulo, it meant that a girl was marriageable. If she was wearing yelechek, it meant that she was married. People were not very talkative, so everything was clear from their clothing.
Народ был немногословный, поэтому, в принципе, все это было видно издалека, именно по костюму.
As a professional seamstress, Madina notes that compared with the past, the majority of the population of Kyrgyzstan over the past decades not only improved the quality of clothing, the wardrobe of each family member is constantly updated. Nowadays, we began to distinguish between casual and festive clothes. Improvement and well-being of both the rural and urban population of the country allows each citizen to improve their clothes. The changes and improvements introduced in it also reflect the growing cultural demand of the urban and rural residents. It's obvious that life has changed, and I make more modern clothing, which fits well, but at the same time we decorate it with national ornaments. I have made many collections through my career. All my collections have national ornaments. It doesn't depend on the season of the collection. Summer, winter, casual, holiday clothing, it always had national patterns. It's enough to look at works that Madina makes for a famous band Shattuk. It is clear to see that it is a masterpiece, bright, colorful, and exclusive. Each of them reflects a history of Kyrgyz people. Today, when it's possible to carefully study the history of national clothing, you understand that despite the economic backwardness aggravated by the heavy oppression of the feudal lords and the constant struggle against external enemies, Kyrgyz people have reached a high level in culture and art, carefully protecting their traditions. On their basis, a unified folk style was created, the characteristic features of which were simplicity, rigor, expressiveness of art forms, and originality. Azerbaijan, a country where folk traditions have always been treated with care and even slightly zealously. Therefore, I think in this state, national coloring is so clearly noticeable. By the way, in recent years, a peculiar boom in national clothes has been observed in Azerbaijan, and this is due to the efforts of local fashion designers. Our correspondent in Baku will continue the story. Azerbaijani national clothes are very diverse. Of course, in our time, only a few people wear it all the time. It's hard to imagine various events and celebrations without national color because such clothes create a special atmosphere. National outfits of each region of Azerbaijan differ from each other. The traditions of Baku, Karabakh, Nakhchivan, Ganja have survived to our days. And modern designers, while maintaining their origins, give them a new breadth and new forms. Gulnara Khalilova, fashion designer, art critic. She runs a national clothing studio, and in her research, she studies subtleties, semantic, cultural, everyday features of the national clothes. She is the author of a book on the style of clothing of musical folk bands. This clothing is related to Nakhchivan region. Women's clothing is called kyleche, and it differs with its knee-long length. It's one of the outdoor clothing. My skirt's length is quite longer. I pay more attention to the upper part, which is called arkhaluk. Belts used to be a symbol of independency. They might be made of gold or silver. We have a quite simple belt. This outfit could be combined with different jewelry. They decorate any clothing even more. Headdress is an essential part of each costume. It's called arakchin. It was worn with or without kelagai. Traditional costume sleeves could have cuts. We have a simple one. Fashion designer orders fabric abroad, but patterns and ornaments are applied to the material exclusively according to her sketches. Gulnara says that she wants to make the look of national clothes more luxurious through the use of modern details. Therefore, the fabric has not only classical ornaments but also patterns close to modern times. This is a men's costume. It is called vizneli chukha. Vizneli means fern, and it is sewed inside the outfit. This kind of costumes were used all around Azerbaijan. They might be with or without fern. In old times, people couldn't define person's social status according to these clothes. Belonging to the upper class could be defined only according to chosen fabric and jewelry. For example, winter outdoor clothing, which is called kurdi and eshmek, were made for rich people exclusively of genuine leather. Poor people's backing was made of cotton. That's why style and design was identical, but the quality of the materials defined the social status of people. I make bullets of a peculiar edging of fabric. It's possible to use real bullets, but it's hard to find them, and I think this way it's more beautiful. A casual shirt was worn under the chukha with a belt above it. Shirts didn't have any particular elements. It was noted only for the quality of fabric. For instance, there could be some patterns on the fabric. Men's national costumes had some peculiarities. For example, sleeves could be short or with cuts. In hot days, it could be huddled on the shoulders. According to Gulnara Khalilova, white color was not used in Azerbaijani national costumes, since among Muslims it's the color of the shroud. Therefore, brides wore exclusively red or orange outfits. This women's clothing has longer sleeves than it was in origin. I've made these changes, as in old times women didn't wear clothing with short sleeves. I've also made shoulder boards. This was made as a sign of strong side of women. Here I combined veil with archin. It also could be combined with kalagai, but clothing is quite decorated with ornaments, so kalagai would be too much. Etek is a long skirt. In earlier times, it took up to 10 meters of fabric to make this skirt. Skirts were white. In this case, we decided to make it more simple. In general, we got a bouffant skirt. We haven't used a buta ornament. However, it might be seen on most of the outfits as it is common for the whole East. Usually, it is used without asymmetric. It has its own meaning. Here we have helix line, bichek, and other patterns made of pearls. In old times, clothing generally was made of silk or velvet. It was used by most of Azerbaijani people despite their social status. However, color of the clothing depended on the age of people. Young people preferred bright colors, dark shades for adults, and seniors preferred black color. Men practically always used to wear headdresses. Not wearing headdress was inappropriate. Women generally wore an archin at home. They used to cover the headdress with kalagai when they went outside. Kalagai became quite popular accessory of women's clothing in our days. It is used by many designers' collections. Using elements of national clothing at the weddings and festivals is becoming a trend among women. Designers say that it's a good sign. It's quite possible that in the near future, national clothing will become an essential part of every Azerbaijani's wardrobe. It seems like national clothing is becoming a peculiar trend in many countries across the world. For example, in Kazakhstan. It's hard to believe that 30 years ago there was absolutely no interest in national clothing at all. And nowadays we have a completely different situation. I won't argue that nowadays it's quite rare to see a complete set of the national costume in the streets of the city. However, there is no need in that. But as for the individual forms and types of clothing, here you can argue. Hats, shoes, felt products, Kazakh pattern, ornament, jewelry. This is only a part that has again become a tradition for many residents of Kazakhstan. But holidays and large events can fully show the splendor of a folk costume. And right now, I suggest you to visit one of the centers of Kazakh national clothing. In fact, this is an atelier specializing in tailoring Kazakh national clothing. And there are more and more such centers in the Republic every year, since there is an active revival of centuries-old traditions. Accordingly, demand creates supply. But first, a little history. Simplicity, practicality, and unique color are characteristic for the national clothes of Kazakhs. The style of clothing and its shape for many centuries have been common to people of any age and status. Only materials, decor, the number of clothes, and ornaments could speak of the social and clan affiliation of citizens. By the way, Kazakhs suit clothes mainly from materials they made themselves: leather, fur, thin felt, and cloth, but often import materials such as silk, brocade, velvet, and cotton. So the idea of opening a center of national clothes arose by businessman Aydar Sovetuli for a reason. In 2005, his team was fortunate enough to participate in the international exhibition Expo in the Japanese city of Aichi. There they represented Kazakh national jewelry, souvenirs, clothes, and more. In a word, they prepared many interesting exhibits for the exhibition.
Приходили японцы, смотрели.
Japanese people came to see our exhibition. They took pictures of the ornaments and patterns. They were impressed. We were also surprised, and we didn't expect that our images, patterns, and ornaments, Oy Ornek, will be the most beautiful, rich, and colorful.
Действительно, самый красивый, самый такой богатый, насыщенный цвет.
Participating in the exhibition, Aydar realized that it's extremely important to revive national traditions. This should at the same time arouse interest in the origins and culture of the Kazakh people both domestically and abroad, as well as increase the authority and reputation of Kazakhstan on the international arena. So the Center of National Clothes was opened, where at first only 3 people worked. All of them began to actively study the history of Kazakh clothing, visit local history museums, communicate with culturologists and designers. After 14 years, the company has more than 30 employees, and the number of customers is increasing every day.
Когда вот в Японию ездили, я сам не ожидал, что японцы одеваются в своей национальной одежде и приходят на любые мероприятия.
When we went to Japan, we did not expect that the Japanese put on their national clothes, come to any events in national clothes, mostly in kimono. But at weddings, it is a must. But we didn't have that. But at the moment, this is becoming a trend. For weddings and anniversaries, I myself put on a costume in which there is a national ornament. And every year, people have already begun to come not only to Nowruz, but also to other events. And every year, they are increasingly coming back to their roots.
Возвращаясь к истокам.
Designer of the center, Miroana Akaz, treats her work with great love. She puts her soul in the outfits that she makes. It's clear to see as the range of the clothing is diverse. However, Miroana notices that mainly they sew what is more in demand. For example, chapans, bishpeks, justicoats, wedding and children outfits, dresses, shirts, and headdresses. These are all in demand. This kind of clothing is often bought as a gift. While many other types of clothes and styles are produced individually by order of museums or special events.
Это чапан мужской.
This is a man's chapan. If we take a look back at the history, chapans were worn by adult men.
Сейчас мы уже выпускаем.
It was also given as a gift for honorable people.
Сохраняя культуру.
Now we are releasing a more stylized version, but we tried to preserve the culture, aesthetics, history, cut, and technology.
Такие знатные люди, как Абай Кунанбай.
This type of chapan was worn by such famous people as Abai. In that times, men used to wear this type of handmade chapan with mink fur. Nowadays, it's also given as a gift to notable people. It is a special gift.
Этот чапан тоже аналогичный, только мы сохранили здесь.
This chapan is similar, but we have kept more of Kazakh colors.
Большей части, если ссылаясь
According to the history, in most cases, brown color was the most popular, also green and yellow.
зеленые тона, желтые тона. У нас есть 4 вида вышивки. Это тамбурная, гладь, это ручная канитель.
We have 4 types of embroidery: chain work, satin stitch embroidery, hand embroidery, and embroidery mixed with different gems and beads. If this type of chapan is of brown color, then we choose suitable color of mink and of the embroidery.
Данный вид чапана
This very type of chapan is made of natural velvet of green color. We use a 3D technology for the embroidery here.
из канители 3D технологии. Женский камзол. Его в древности носили.
Women's camisole. In old times, it used to be worn only for special occasions.
Он предназначен для обеспеченной
In other words, for some holidays and events.
семьи. Потому что здесь
It is intended for wealthy people, because here we use crystals, hand embroidery, and high-quality velvet.
высокого качества. В современном мире его дарят
In modern times, this type of camisole was given to respectable women.
людям, очень уважаемым женщинам. Данный вид изделия у нас предназначен для проводов невест.
This type of clothing is dedicated to bride's send-off. We call it kız uzatu.
Конечно, у каждой невесты есть свои.
Definitely every bride has her own style and taste.
Мы, опять же, ссылаясь на историю, создали.
But again, based on the history, we have made a long camisole decorated with braid. Nowadays, it is called passive braid. Hand embroidery with crystal gems and beads were also used.
С бисером, крой в целом весь образ.
The cut remains the same as it used to be in old times, but the style is modern.
Его вот в современном стиле. Также вот салкиле у нас.
Here is salkilye. It's not finished yet, but here are some decorations on it. It is decorated with owlish feather that was used often in old times.
Широко.
It looks like this. Every day, national clothing attracts attention of fashion artists and designers. National clothing's elements are actively used in modern clothing, and it becomes more and more popular. That's all for today. You have watched Colors of Asia. See you next time.